You learn, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, now we're recording. Okay. So, start us over. 3, 2, 1. What's going on, guys? My name is BaLLHaWK. Tonight I'm joined by Nuke Bomb. You want to say what's up?
It's good.
We are good. That's why we're ranking these VGC teams, right?
I hope so. I don't know.
So now that we actually hit the record button, let's hop into number 16. Actually,
Yeah.
first off, disclaimer: these rankings are in no way, shape, or form a ranking of how we view the coaches. They are strictly subjective on how we feel about the teams. Anybody in here can finish at any place at the end of the season, and we're just giving you our thoughts on the way the teams are constructed. With that said, I'll start things off at number 16. Coming in first, we've got Aku. And Aku's team, to me, just seems like it lacks a lot of synergy. I think that's my main takeaway from this team. It's got, a lot of speed grouped up towards the bottom, where it's got one trick room setter in Reuniclus, and its main trick room sweeper looks like wants to be Gigalith, or Reuniclus itself, and I'm not sure how reliable that's going to be. But other than that, its speed is kept out at 100. It's got it's got some redirection, but I mean, Chiromoid, Celesteela, Grimmsnarl, Urshifu Rapid Strike. I mean, it's got some pieces, but they just don't seem like they work the greatest together, or they don't have the best synergy, and that's just the biggest takeaway from this.
Yeah, I agree with the lack of synergy. For me, with my rankings, I try to just kind of think about like what would be the hardest to prep for, and not necessarily like with my team specifically, but just like in general. And so for me, looking at this team, it kind of seems like, yeah, what you're saying with lack of synergy, like you don't have to prep for dangerous combos. Like you just have to make sure you have something to do with each different team member, because only except for like Filepton, but that's besides the point. Like there's trick room, but like, and the team's kind of slow, but not that slow, and nothing that's like that dangerous in trick room. Nothing for the sand. Nothing that fast, and even with Tailwind, it's Volcarona, which is definitely not the best Tailwind center, and even with Tailwind, the rest of his team is still kind of slow, and with a lot of other teams having Tailwind or really fast mons, it's just kind of tough. So I think there is potential with, some scary stuff here, but I think there's a lot of burden on Aku here to try to make it work, and not that he can't, but I hope that he can find some cool combinations here that maybe we're not seeing. But yeah, I just think it's kind of a little bit underwhelming in terms of the synergy, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to number 15. I'll let you start this one off. We got Lord Nobody.
Yeah, so for me, he was lower than you, but we both had him kind of low. There are some offensive threats here, Rillaboom, Zapdos, Cinderace. Scavaliers in Trick Room is an offensive threat. I mean, I don't know exactly Dialga's role, and it's not really like a sweeper though. But I think the main thing for me is that this team like really needed redirection, and it doesn't have it. And even so, like its threats, there is some synergy between them, but it's like short enough of synergy that it's kind of underwhelming. Like I feel like it's kind of easy to deal with the threats enough here that I don't know, it's not too bad. And like I think there's enough of a team here that it can do some things, like, but I don't know, just kind of underwhelming overall, I would say.
For sure. I think that this team is kind of set up to have Rillaboom and Dialga and Cinderace just kind of, even Zapdos really. I mean, those top four just provide a lot of pressure in their own right, and I think it's kind of set up to let those, facilitate them to just steamroll some teams. After those four, though, I mean, and Meowstic, I guess. Actually, I think it's just the last four picks that don't really jive with me too much. I don't see like the overarching just theme of the team. I don't know. It just seems like, I mean, they've got decent defense, decent offense. They got solid speed. It just seems like they're not really excelling in one particular area. Like they don't look like they have an overabundance of support. I mean, they got decent offense. Their defense seems, you know, okay. I just don't see this team really standing out. I guess was my biggest thing. It's just kind of meh to me, and that doesn't reflect anything towards Lord or nobody or anything like that. It's just the way that I feel about the team. So, moving on to number 14, we've got Electric, or the name he goes by now is BaLLHaWK, and his
fantastic,
team. It is fantastic. Gotta say, big fan. This team, on the other hand, I think it's a little top-heavy to me. The fact that he got away with Talonflame in the 5th round, I mean, that's round 1 worthy in a restricted format. The fact that I didn't pick it is kind of blasphemy. But in all seriousness, I think his team is a little bit top-heavy. I can kind of see the support that Grimmsnarl is going to provide, things like Necrozma, Spectrier, and Furiosa. Having things like Thunderwave, Fake Tears, Scary Face, Screen support, Fake Out, Trick. It's definitely got potential with this team. It's going to be interesting to see what he does with Furiosa. I think it's a good focus Ash user, and after that, once it gets the first kill, it can just kind of steamroll things. I think Necrozma is a likely weakness policy holder, and having something like Spectrier or Grimmsnarl to proc it itself is kind of nice. Other than that, I just think this team is, like I said, it's very top heavy. It seems kind of frail in the back half to me, and I think that for him to win, he's going to have to play fairly carefully or rely on screens.
Yeah, I kind of agree with the top heavy. Like, I feel like this team relies on Grimmsnarl a lot for support, and obviously Talonflame has Talon support, but like beyond that, I guess it's not the most support mon. But just with Grimmsnarl to support his main heavy hitters, which the reason I had it a little higher than you is I do like the synergy between his heavy hitters, and having Grimmsnarl is nice, but I don't know if it's not quite enough. And I think it's definitely good enough to win games, and this could be a good team, maybe even like one change away from being a really, really good team. I think part of it is like the last 5 almost feel like I don't know how much they do, because there's almost like you want a Trick Room setup to support the Necrozma, because it can work in a Trick Room, but you don't really want it to set Trick Room, and then you have like Executor or Lola to set it, or Jinx. And then Azumarill maybe is a threat, but when you don't have follow or any redirection support, it's really hard to get it set up, because it's not the bulkiest, especially in restricted format. So I do like it is top heavy, but I really do like the top of it. And I think it has potential to just win on its own, and so that's why I have it. In VGC only bring 4, but the fact that it is that top heavy and the rest is, I'm just not really sure what it does, makes it easier to kind of prep, because you kind of know what you're going to be facing. And maybe Lord Nobody will come out with, or that was the last one, sorry, this one's Electric. Maybe we have some interesting sets that involve some of these the back half of this draft more. That'll surprise us, and I'd be excited to see that. But I kind of feel like this team is really relying on those top 5, like you were saying.
For sure. Coming to number 13, we got Jesse, and I'll let you start us off.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the last one that we're closer on. Like after this, a lot of the ones in the middle, and even towards the top, there's a lot of like ones where we kind of don't have very similar opinions. So, but this, I mean, we had 13 and 11, which is pretty close. And I do respect horses, and this is me ranking it this low is not an indication of my opinion of Benet Gang or anything. But obviously taking 2 ice horses with your first 2 picks does have some type redundancy, and with ice not being the best defensive typing, that's not very necessarily the best thing. Like if you look at his type chart, there's a lot of red, and there are a lot of threats here. Like I think this team, you almost have to prep for basically everything. Maybe Berserker and Fungus, you don't expect to see that much, if ever, but honestly everything else is scary enough. I just don't think this team has the most synergy. I think there's some decent synergy, there's Trick Room and things that go well, and obviously sort of, stuff with Colossal is scary, and he does have good stuff to go with it. I just think the amount of weaknesses this teams have puts a lot of burden on him to really cover for those weaknesses, which can kind of take away from the offensive firepower of this team.
I think this team is definitely going to be relying on setup. You got, and Dragapult is really the crux of it all. Really getting the quick serve for the GMX Colossal, getting that set up is going to be key for that. And that combo alone can just win, a lot of games by itself. Also, Dragapult would beat up for Virizion or for Mudsdale. The Oranguru getting the Trick Room set up where it could just, I think it's got like Bulldoze or something maybe, where it could also help proc a weakness policy on GMX Colossal for a Trick Room sweep. But just Trick Room alone for the 2 Ice Horses with the Oranguru and the Instruct is going to be big. Berserker alongside those as well, strengthening steel type moves or just tough claws in general. It's got I like the redirection with the cheap Fungus. But ultimately, yeah, it's just the massive type weakness overlaps where it's just, I feel like if you win turn 1 against this team, you basically ensure yourself that set, just because I think this team relies on a lot of turn 1 setup. So that's what we got. Moving on to number 12, we've got Hater. Looking at Hater's team, I see the Sand, I see the Regieleki, and I see the Dracovish, and it doesn't look fun. I mean, it looks fun for him, honestly. I see a lot of good budget picks on this team. He's got the cheap Fletchinder for Tailwind. He's got Crustle for a solid Trick Room sweeper. He's got a couple of Trick Room setters, not very great Trick Room setters, but I mean they can still set it nonetheless in Mewtwo and Porygon Z. He's got a lot of scary physical sweepers, or just offensive threats in general with Dracovish, Porygon Z, Regieleki, Excadrill, and Mewtwo. And even Tyranitar, it's a very likely weakness policy holder that once it gets it, if it demaxes, good luck getting rid of it. And he's got a solid redirection support with Togetic. I think the team is solid, and I think that, it has the potential offensively to plow through a lot of teams. The one thing that this team really lacks, in my opinion, aside from the Tyranitar and the Togetic to an extent, is just defense. I think this kind of overlaps into, as much hyper offense as you can get for VGC right now. And I think that this team could be pretty easily broken, strength on strength. Especially if you're able to deal with the Sand, I think this team kind of falls flat on its face, in my opinion.
I actually like this team. I had it ranked a lot higher than you did. I mean, for me, it was kind of one of the teams in like the middle where it looked good, but the thing that separated from like the top tier for me, it was like there's no like one centralizing threat that like is like a Zacian Crounder, for example. Not the only one, but you get the picture. But like what you're saying about it being frail, I think it relies a lot on screens, especially from Alecki, because it's a really good screen setter. And Alecki is kind of the crux of this team because the screens really help the frailers offensive mons. The speed control helps, like with Porygon Z being slower and Dracovish being slower. But even having Sand Rush, Dracovish, being able to use that, I think is really cool combo. And I think that this team's offensive threats are like varied enough that it's hard to prep for all of them at once. And I think it's just a pretty scary team, honestly. And I do agree, like, there's not a lot of defense, and I think that's part of the reason I had held it back. And maybe if I had looked at, maybe I would adjust it a little bit now, but, what's done is done. And I think this is still a fair ranking. And I don't know but I think if this team can just win with offense, that's kind of what I did last season, honestly, and it worked for me. So if Hater can find a way for it to work, I think this team definitely is scary. But yeah, that's kind of my opinion.
All right. Coming in at number 11, we got Gil Bates, and I'll let you take it away.
Another one I had a little higher. So obviously I mean, I think part of the reason I have this, I felt like Xerneas plus redirection is like, I could had to have that in like the top 10. Like that's just an easy combo to win very easily. Well, I did think that Amoonguss and Ndidi were kind of redundant because they obviously are different typing and stuff, but their main role on this team is to redirect, and having two really expensive mons with doing that, I think, takes away from the oomph of the rest of the team.
This male Ndidi actually, sorry, I want to interrupt a little bit. Male Ndidi actually doesn't get redirection. It's got fake out.
Sorry.
Only the female Ndidi has the follow me. Male Ndidi has fake out.
Okay, so that was, but Amoonguss has it,
right.
But it does. But even then, it does feel like then Ndidi, I guess, is the one that's a little like I don't know what it's doing that much, because you have psychic terrain, but I guess it does prevent fake out is nice. But then you have Prankster Lifeheart that you kind of is a really important part of your team, and I don't know. Xerneas Amoonguss is a really scary combo that can win, and I think Kingdra's really a big threat. It's a little bit harder on himself by not having an instant rain setter, but obviously Prankster Rain is still good, and obviously Justified Cabalion's good. There's a lot of good things here that I thought put it up in the middle. I just thought outside of the top there wasn't quite enough oomph for it to raise into the other teams with really big threats, because I think it just like comes a little too short. But the Xerneas Amoonguss threat is so good that with a redirector, it's just really hard to prep for. Like you need very specific prep for just to deal with that one threat. Yeah.
Definitely. I'll say that team kind of it kind of falls close to the Aku team for me. The saving grace is the Xerneas Amoonguss. I think that combo in itself is absolutely phenomenal. Not only is Amoonguss able to redirect attacks, but it's able to take on the attacks that normally would be super effective towards Xerneas, and is able to just shrug them off. The speedsters are pretty good. I think the defense, the overall bulk of the team is pretty nice. I like all the support options here. I think Jolteon was a good pickup in the later rounds there. Rhydon is a good, sneaky, it can do basically the same things that Rhyperior does, and it has the option to hold Violate if you didn't want to slap a weakness policy on it. Blaziken could be nice, especially when he's got the 3 fake out support or fake out users plus the redirection. Mr. Rhyme having Screen Cleaner is very nice, and it also has fake out in itself. I think the team is going to be relying a lot on Xerneas, and having to set up manual rain for Kingdra to do what it wants to do is not necessarily ideal. It's also got beat up Cobalion strats as well, so it'll be interesting. I think it's going to rely a lot on Xerneas and Amoonguss.
Yeah. One thing that stands out is like with the Cobalion thing, his live part is slower than Cobalion, which makes it way harder to do that because you're getting the boost after you do something, and so you're almost losing a turn then. So the strategy is still good, but it loses a lot of its power by having a user being slower than your Justified on.
Sure. All right, coming in at number 10, we got yours truly. I guess I'll start off defending my team. I placed myself in the middle of the pack just because I think taking a second look at my team, it doesn't really look like it's overpowering at all, I guess. It kind of looks a little bit passive to me when I take a step back, and I think a lot of Majestic tend to fall in that category just in general. But I think my goal was to get Groudon or Kyogre. Being at the 11th spot in the draft, I guess that was kind of a pipe dream. So I decided to settle on, hey, if I can't join them, I'm just gonna, cancel them with Rayquaza and Airlock. So this team kind of started off with the theme of just canceling the weather, and I thought G-Max Lapras was a phenomenal partner for Rayquaza, being able to proc a weakness policy if I want to, or just set up screens with Shell or with the G-Max Resonance. And getting Gothitelle after that was kind of nice, just be able to play Trap Shenanigans and with Pear Song, And after that, it was just kind of playing along with that. I think Cinderace was a good, do-it-all offensive presence. And then picking up Gardevoir in the 9th round for 3 points was a bit of a blunder on the tiering. It should have definitely been about 3 points higher at least. But it is what it is, and I'm happy to take advantage of it. And I think I think I may have played into the Parrish trap shenanigans a little bit too much with this draft, but looking back, I think it's going to be hard for teams to break, hard for teams to, it's got a lot of prep bait, I guess. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, the thing about Gardevoir is like it definitely was undervalued, but I don't think it's good enough on its own to like really swing anything. So even though you did get it for cheaper than was expected, I think that like it's good. Like I see bringing it, but like it's not like a mon that like is a team defining thing that you got for way cheaper than it should be. So I think for the whole season, it shouldn't, hopefully isn't too big of an impact.
No.
But I think for me, I think maybe I have a little bit of a bias against more defensive teams. And I think that's kind of what this is. I mean, obviously, like Rayquaza, Cinderace was big offensive threats. Gengar. I mean, Scrafty can be, but kind of requires setup and does have bulk. But I think that with a team like this that's kind of defensive, it's easier to kind of bring prep that can just kind of overwhelm your defensive options. And with a mon, again, I think Cinderace really struggles when it doesn't have... okay, technically Pikachu is redirection, but if you're bringing Pikachu, that means you're not bringing something else in your team. So that's the trade-off you're going to have to ask yourself. But if you're not bringing Pikachu, you don't have redirection with next to Cinderace, which makes it definitely weakens it a lot from something that's like really hard to deal with to something that hits hard, but you can deal with yourself pretty easily. Rayquaza is a threat, but I think that because it's kind of slow, and you don't have any super fast way of setting up Tailwind, that it can be liable to being a little too frail, and that's the nice thing about your Lapras. I think they do pair really well, and I think that's a good combo. But again, like what I was saying before, like the mid-tier of teams, that looks pretty good. There wasn't enough to like, there wasn't like any big scary threat like that require like centralizing threat that you have to focus a lot of your prep around for this team that could really push it into that top tier for me. So not any necessarily glaring weakness, I would say, but not quite enough either. And that's part of the drawback of drafting in the back half of a restricted format when there's like 6 good ones.
Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on to number 9, I mean. We got, forgive me if I butcher this pronunciation, but Shani Pika. And
Janapika, something like that, I would guess.
Yeah, why don't you take it away, man?
This one we were very divided on this one.
Sure.
I think I see where you're coming from, because like there's some good things here, and obviously Groudon Venusaur is a very dangerous combo. I did have it 14, but honestly, like it was more like in the tier, like it almost in that middle tier, maybe a little bit lower, but like it wasn't me necessarily saying it's bad. I just think that outside of the Groudon and Venusaur, there isn't a ton of things that are super scary, and Stack Attack is a threat, but I think that there's a reason it's not like 18 points is because, well, actually it is 18, whatever. But like, I think there are enough ways to deal with it, again, without great redirection. Riolu's a solid support mon to support. Maybe I had it a little underrated, but it ended up being in the middle, which I think is probably pretty fair. So I think if you can prep for the top 2, and the rest of the team is still scary, and I think there are threats, but I think outside of the Groudon Venusaur combo, the rest of the team doesn't quite do enough to really like bring up those 2, I would say.
So the reason I ranked this so high is just because I think he's got so many ways they could set up, or that they could prep to win. I think just the Groudon G-Max Venusaur in itself is it's an upgraded Torkoal Venusaur. The fact that he's got Dust Claps to potentially set Trick Room for Stakateka and then proc its own weakness policy with a Bulldoze or something along those lines just kind of makes Stakateka a bit more dangerous. And then I think Heatran is, if you slap an Air Balloon or something on it, or a Shukaberry on it, is maybe one of the better partners for the Sun. And then, after that, it's just support, pretty much. Latias is kind of an in-between where it could cross over with an offensive weakness policy holder and support. But then, you got Sableye, Riolu, and Torracat, which are all very good support mods in a VGC draft format. Sableye is the ultimate disruptor. Being able to patch up the team's relatively slow nature with Quash, Fake Out. It's got Foul Play, Knockoff, Snarl, Leer, Trick. I mean, Sableye is one of the best, if not the best, support Pokemon in a VGC draft, in my opinion. And then Riolu with Prankster, coaching, just to kind of help make Groudon or Heatran or Stakateka or even Mawile just more dangerous. I think this team could, it has offense and variety of offense that I think is just going to be hard for teams to, defend it or beat it before it beats them. Moving on to 8, we've got Nuke Bomb himself. And do you want to start off, man, or do you want me to?
I guess since we did it with you starting off here on, I'll start out again. The reason I had myself kind of low, it was more like I'm always struggle with assessing my own team. So I just kind of put it in the middle pack, and then just kind of threw it in there and didn't really be I don't know. I just kind of looked at the other teams more and just kind of put myself in the middle of the pack, honestly. Honestly, with the first round, since I was at the back, I was like, I'll just grab Incineroar. And then Indeedee was there, so I was like, okay, I'll just get 2 Pokemon that I can kind of do whatever I want the rest of the draft. And so I decided to go with the Necrozma throw. I knew I could wait till the end to get it. So I do like how I think there's some Trick Room options here. I like the redirection that I have, especially. That was something that I didn't have last season, and I had to really come up with a lot of not a lot of some pretty interesting sets to try to play around that, because it made my life a little bit harder. And then honestly, Ravambi's not great, but I do like that it at least gives me some decent tailwind with it being fairly fast. So I don't know, I was just trying to kind of pick a team that gives me options and isn't really stuck on doing one strategy, and I can approach matchups different ways, because with being at the back, I'm not going to have one mon that everyone has to prep for, so that way my team can kind of be flexible when I approach different teams that have different kinds of threats to hopefully deal with them. That was kind of my overall thinking, I guess.
So I'm a little bit salty about this draft because you had not only 1, but 2 major snipes in my draft plan. You took Raichu in the 4th, which I was going to get that round, and then you took Marowak the same round I was going to get it, which I think they both pair perfectly with your team, both having the Lightning Rod to help support Gyarados. I think the Ribombee pairing with G-Max Snorlax is actually really good because, it's giving me flashbacks to Gen 7 VGC, speed boost, speed swap shenanigans with Snorlax. And then having the 2 really good Trick Room setters to help Snorlax as well, or Marowak. Raichu support for Gyarados is something that can steamroll, especially if it's Moxie. And then Necrozma Dawn, I'm not entirely sure what it does, but I know it's got sky-high special attack and solid overall bulk, so it's going to be something that people are going to have to figure out a way to deal with. Overall, I think you got a lot of good support and not really any one major weakness. I think you got good speed spread, and I think you got a lot of ways that you could set up to win each week. Moving on to 7, we've got Hacker, and I guess I'll start off with Hacker. These next 3 teams, I think I kind of had them in a group where they're all really good, but not quite top 3 or top 4 potential. I think there was a little bit of a divide between those 2 groups. But this team in general, I think, is just very, very powerful offense. Yveltal, Tapu Fini, Metagross, Aerodactyl, Meganodon. He's got 2 really fast Tailwind setters. Cottonee is listed there as Tailwind, but I know for a fact that it doesn't get it in VGC, which is unfortunate. G-Max Hatterene being a good Trick Room, not only setter, but sweeper, and to help set up the BaLLHaWK was nice. BaLLHaWK also pairs really well with the Tapu Fini and Yveltal for the Lightning Rod as well. Togepi is a cheap redirection. It's okay. It's good for one turn of free setup, I suppose. And yeah, I think Metagross would be really good on this team as well, being a good weakness policy setter, being able to win in either Trick Room or set up speed. So I think this team is gonna try to beat you in like the first 2 turns. If it doesn't, it might struggle a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I do think like this team has a lot of really good things to it. Like Yveltal is really good, Fini's good, and Metagross is really good. And I had BaLLHaWK last season, and I'm pretty sure it was the kill leader for the regular season, or at least it was definitely up there. Naganadel, I'm not sure. I don't think it'll be bad, but I'm not sure how good it'll be. Aerodactyl's solid talent, but I think one thing holding this team back is like the support mons are fine, but not quite right. Like for BaLLHaWK to really succeed, it just helped for me to have like a dedicated Trick Room setter that can just set it and just be supportive next to it, and that's almost what Hatterene has to be. But having Hatterene G-Max, you almost want that to be an offensive threat too. So you're kind of taking away from its power by forcing it into a more supportive role. And again, like having Togepi for redirections, but also bringing Togepi, and then you have to take something else off the team.
Right.
But I do think with like the faster non-Trick Room threats, they kind of go well together. Again, maybe a little bit short on the right support to go with them. Sneasel, I think, can work fine with it. And I think there are threats definitely here. I think that the support is kind of what holds this team back a little bit, though.
I would agree. Coming at 6, we've got Avent, and I'll let you start us off with Avent.
Yeah, I think this team was like, for me, like on the border between a team that was like top tier with like an insane main threat, but also like just like a bunch of other threats. I think the only thing that my main problem with this team is that he doesn't have one of the 5 best Ubers, or not Ubers, sorry, that's me talking. The restricteds. That's because they were all gone by the time he picked, so obviously that's not anything his fault. Minus points, I guess, for taking the space instead of the time Pokemon, but he was younger. Yeah, this team is really good. Comfy Palkia is a great combo. Rillaboom is really good. Obviously, I think the G-Max is slightly better, but it's still really good on its own, and you get terrain control from it. Entei, I think, is a good Pokemon. I had it drafted, but I dropped it for the season, and I think it can be good. I don't know 100% that it'll fit well, but Morgrem is fine. It's obviously a little underwhelming as a support mon since it's frail and obviously gets Eviolite, but yeah. But Crobat, you get faster Tailwind. There's just a lot of offensive threats here. There's not quite the most bulk and not quite the most support, but I think this team has such good synergy. I guess Rillaboom kind of is support, but I also see it as an offensive mon too. So, but I think there's just a lot of things here that are really good and synergize really well. And makes this team really hard to prep for, because you can prep for the Comfy Palkia combo maybe, but then like your team might not be ready for, I don't know, just like an Aegis-Slash team or something like that. So this team, I think, is really dangerous because of the variety of things he can throw at you, and they're all really scary and dangerous. Yeah.
I think my biggest issue with it is the lack of support. I think the first 3 picks, well, first 5 picks actually, were phenomenal. The Palkia Comfy combo is going to strike fear into the hearts of everybody that had to prep for it, mainly me for week 1. I think he could have used a little more support. I think the Rapidash Galar, he's got to rep the Nagang, but he already got Comfey. I don't know what Rapidash really does for you guys, other than maybe imprison Trick Room. But I think overall, Trick Room in general will be an issue for him, just because he doesn't have anything below speed of 60. you can probably slap a room service on Aegis-Slash or something like that, but I think Trick Room Ground or Trick Room Poison types, Ice types, Freeze Dry is going to be an issue for this team as well. I don't know. It kind of fell into one of that, you know, like what you said, that next tier from the top tier. You know, it's really good, but just like one or two things missing that, you know, kind of separated the teams above it from this one. Moving on to the top 5, we've got Cheesy coming in first. Cheesy's team is, you know, full weather pretty much, really committing to the sun. Got Ho-Oh, which is, I think it's more bulky annoyance than anything. You know, although, you know, in the sun it's going to hit really hard. Sacred Fire, having the chance to 50% burn, or 50% chance to burn something every play is going to be, you know, very annoying for offensive teams that are on the physical side, and then having the sun boost its power, and, you know, that's going to suck. Having Conkeldurr, Porygon 2, who's got a solid Trick Room presence, along with Torkoal. You got the Lilligant Torkoal shenanigans, giving flashbacks to Gen 7. Scraggy is, you know, it's a decent, cheap support option with Fake Out, Intimidate, Snarl, you know, everything that Scrafty provides, just less bulk. Yeah, G-Max Duraludon. It's, you know, the regular, or the base Duraludon is obviously better. You'd rather have the drop and attack effect from its main move, but, you know, it's still a threat. Duraludon is much better in VGC than it is here. But I think it's kind of redundant with the Goodra, and that's really my only drawback with this team. I think the team has a myriad of threats that can just tear through teams, and I think you're definitely going to have to be on your guard when you're playing Cheesy.
Yeah, I really like this team. I had it a little higher than you. For me, honestly, even like the top tier teams, like the very top, maybe except for the number 1, which obviously we'll get to in a minute here, they were all really good, and there was like maybe one minor thing holding them back from being like, maybe perfect, a little bit of an overstatement, but from being fully complete. And I think this team, like, I'll just start with the negative, I guess. The only thing that's kind of holding it back is nothing is too fast, and his Tailwind is a little slow with Ho, but obviously Ho is pretty fat, so it can live and still set it up, but it's not the best combo. And I guess with Sun, that kind of, in theory, boosts Venusaur's speed a lot. But I just think that this team, like, there's no glaring weakness, really. Like, it just kind of all works well. And, like, maybe we're not going to see, like, Lilligant coming every week, but it's just really hard to, I think, maybe not the most offensive. Not necessarily, that's not necessarily bad, though, because with the Sun, Venusaur is really scary. Ho-Oh Dynamaxing, I feel like with its bulk, and even in or out of the Sun, being able to Airstream with Stab is scary. But also with having Trick Room, with Conk, and even Torkoal can be, you know, Trick Room with like Eruption or stuff like that. So I think this team has a lot of options that kind of make it hard to prep for, because you can't just prep for Torkoal Venusaur and you'll get blown back by Ho-Oh or E2 Conk. Like, there's just a lot of different things that can get thrown at you from this team that I think it just makes prepping hard, because you can almost have to prep for basically everything that he has. And so I think that's, you know, what I was saying, like, that was kind of one of my main criteria. So that was the reason I had this one really high.
Well said. Coming in at number 4, we've got Jace. I'll let you start off with Jace.
Yeah, well, first, his top 3 before, because I'm Urshifu S at the back there is really his top, one of the first round picks, and he just waited till the end because he had the points. Those 4 are very, very scary. You know, Togepi, having a redirection with those is scary. Intimidate. And I like the synergy between it's hard to say, Solgaleo and Lando T. I think the speed on this team is kind of awkward because, like, Togekiss gets Tailwind, so it can get set up, but it's not the easiest to set up too, because Togekiss is also your redirection, and, like, since it won't be outspeeding and doing it, so I think that's a little tough. But obviously there is still a Trick Room threat Rhyperior Turret is scary in Trick Room. The only thing is that having Slowking as your Trick Room setter makes it a little bit harder. Like, if the Trick Room setter was better, this team might... Well, actually, it was my number 2, but it would have probably competed for number... Like, I think this team was definitely below number 1, but definitely number 2. But I think it had a shot. If it had a better Trick Room setter, this might have been a number 1 team. Because when Thwacky's a fine support mon, you know, you get terrain control then, but it's not, you know, the most... It's not that great. Obviously, it's just a Thwacky. So I think this team has a lot of really good threats. And I do like the synergy a lot between the offensive mons, both the faster ones and the slower Trick Room stuff. I just think the Trick Room is a little underwhelming getting it set up and kind of getting that strategy. So it doesn't completely invalidate it, but it just makes it a lot harder on Jace.
Yeah, I think the synergy on this team is really good as well. I like the 2 Trick Room sweepers and Turtonator and Rhyperior. Urshifu, yeah, those Urshifu landers, Solgaleo, they're going to provide a lot of pressure. And then Purloin and Thwacky are just kind of... Thwacky more so is, you know, he's got a niche carved out for him in the tier. It'd be interesting to see how many times he brings Purloin. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot else to say. I mean, the team checks a lot of boxes. I guess the reason why I ranked him so low is just because I don't know what Solgaleo does in the format, other than the fact that it's really bulky and it's got a good psychic steel typing. I think that was my main downfall in trying to rank this team. Other than that, though, I think the team looks phenomenal, and I'm looking forward to seeing it used. Coming in number 3, we've got Fate, and Fate's team is basically the exact image almost of what I wanted to try coming into this. I think they did a great job of, you know, securing Kyogre, Tornadus, and Kartana. That in itself is, you know, good job, man. And then the Hitmontop, Tapu Koko, Uxie, Raichu, Koko Raichu is going to provide a lot of pressure. The entire, you know, Kyogre, Tornadus, Tapu Koko, Raichu. Like, there's 2 main cores of this team. I think they work really well together. The only thing that's missing for me is a ranged sweeper. Yeah, he's got Kingler G-Max, but, you know, seeing something like maybe Seismitoad or Kingdra more so, you know, something with Swift Swim would have been nice to see, just provide that much more pressure, but it's definitely not necessary. I mean, Raichu can wear a lot of hats on this team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't think this team is, you know, it's very hyper offensive, but also has solid bulk. I just think this team is going to be hard for teams to really break before it just kind of chunks them too much, and they don't have anything left in the tank.
I mean, I agree that it's really scary. Like, Kyogre Torn is like, that's real. And that's not impossible to deal with, but it requires a significant amount of prep. But then also, you know, he's just got Tapu Koko and Kartana there too, with a good electric terrain abuser with Raichu, and like some other good stuff. You know, Hitmontop's got Intimidate, Uxie's fine defensive. I don't know. It feels more like a Trick Room setter on a team that doesn't need Trick Room, or doesn't want Trick Room even. I guess maybe it gets imprisoned Trick Room, or even can just reverse it. I think for me, I might have had it a little too low at 6, but I think the only reason I didn't have it as like the clear number 2, which it almost was, is I think I've talked a lot about teams like lowering teams for not having redirection, but I think this team specifically, like, it like needed redirection more than any other team, because having an electric terrain with this team, it's almost begging for like a lightning rod mon, but there just isn't one there, and even like it would just make the rest of his team so much more threatening, because dealing with Kyogre and a Kartana in rain with a mon that, while having to deal with like a redirector, I think would be so much more difficult. And I think this team is still really scary. Like, it's obviously good. I had it really high, but I think it, again, coming back to like how hard it is to prep against, I think not having redirection allows you to focus more on the threats, the main threats of this team, and not have to worry about going around a redirector. And I guess Raichu Alola technically gets it, but Well, it does get it, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's ideal because it's just it's not ideal. So he could make it work with Raichu, but I feel like this team is really scary and hard to prep for. But you give yourself more options, like prepping against it, because you don't have to worry as much about a redirection sitting next to a Kyogre as much or something like that. So
that's fair.
That's kind of my main thought.
Yeah. All right, moving on to number 2. We got Mr. Marshadow. Why don't you start us off?
Oh, sorry, that was my cue. Well, Calyrex Shadow is obviously busted, basically, because not only is it super duper fast, and I don't even know if Glass Cannon's fair. I mean, its typing makes it kind of a Glass Cannon, but the thing gets literally like every support move in existence, including Speed Swap, which is I didn't realize until recently, which is way scarier than I thought. And maybe on this team it doesn't take advantage of that one that much. But anyways, I just think that this team just comes together really well with all just like, I don't know, synergy is fantastic. You like, there's Intimidate, you got Prankster Tailwind, but also Whimsicott Terrakion is just a terrifying combo on its own. You know, with Justified Beat Up, or even just Tailwind and bopping something. You have Blastoise G-Max, which is a threat, and you don't have a way of redirecting to set up the Blastoise, but you don't necessarily need to be set up Blastoise for it to G-Max and hit you hard with, what is it, Cannonade or whatever its G-Max attack is. So Valet, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if I've seen it that much in VGC. I think my initial thought is it might be kind of underwhelming, but it does provide some nice flexibility. So maybe he can make it work. You know, and then on top of that, he also has Bisharp, which does a great job of deterring Intimidate from his team, which his main, his restricted doesn't necessarily care about Intimidate, but a lot of his other main offensive mons don't want to be intimidated. And so I just kind of like the way this team came together is really good. And the support, I think, kind of just goes well with the offense. Maybe Porygon isn't like the best, but you know, at the end of the draft with only a few points, it's still not bad, I think.
Right. I like the Togedemaru and Zapdos picks for cheap support. Having the dual beat up sweepers is kind of scary, allowing one not to really carry it from week to week. Calyrex Shadow is going to be scary, no matter what the matchup is. G-Max Blastoise is nice because it's able to chip teams down every now and then, or every turn. And Silvally is something that I was also looking at that got sniped right in front of me. The thing that it provides is it doesn't get Tailwind anymore, because that was a Gen 7 tutor move. But it does provide good Snarl, Icy Wind, you know, great special and physical coverage, being able to patch up any type of weakness you have from week to week. Parting Shot support, you know, it's got some good support moves, and you know, getting it there, I think it does a lot of good things for his team. Overall, I think the Terrakion and Calyrex Shadow are just going to punch holes through teams, and then Silvally, Togedemaru, Whimsicott, you know, they're going to facilitate it. Whimsicott is arguably one of the better support mods in the game right now, along with Sableye, so I think this team is definitely scary, and you know, there's a reason why it's number 2. It's really good. Well done, Mr. Marshadow. Coming in at number 1, we've got Miso. Unanimous number 1. Hit every type on the type chart except for normal, which, you know, yeah, it is what it is. Just those first 5 picks, and then after that you got Urshifu Single Strike as well. So like 6 phenomenal picks. You know, you got the best mon in the tier, basically, in Zacian Crown. The luxuries of having the first overall pick. You got Thundurus Therian, who is a great support, good Defiant user to, you know, kind of like what you're talking about with Bisharp, deters the Intimidate from hitting your team. Primarina is one of the better Pokemon in the format. You got Colossal, which, you know, you got Aqua Jet Primarina to set up the same shenanigans as G-Max Colossal, just without the G-Max attack. Quillfish is going to be good. Urshifu Single Strike, you know, it does what it does, and it just, you know, breaks things. Gourgeist is a good pickup. at the end there. Frisk is going to be nice to see what the team is running. And then Shedinja, you know, I see it coming in and winning 1 week because somebody doesn't have a Ghost or a Dark, and that's probably all we'll see from it. And Piloswine is a good, solid, you know, back-end pickup. Overall, this team, I don't see too many gaps in it. Maybe you could look at it as a weakness to Rock and Ghost, but I think they're negligible. I think this team is able to pretty much set up whatever it wants, and it's just flexible enough to have a multitude of ways to win each week. So, well done, Miso. Not looking forward to playing you. Good luck this season.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. The top 6 are just terrifying. Thankfully, the Colossal's not G-Max. Otherwise, this team, it makes it just a little bit easier to deal with than just not having that G-Max move that deals a residual, which I guess Sand does. But then, you know, if you're setting up Sand, you're not setting up the Sun. So, anyways, this is pretty scary. Like, you already have to figure out how you're dealing with Zacian. And then, like, the fact that there's also an Urshifu, which is, like, it basically doesn't care about Intimidate, in some ways, at least, unless you resist fighting. But, because, like, you know, it always crits, so the stat drops don't matter. And I just think that there's great synergy. You know, he's got great pairings that make it really tough to deal with. And honestly, the offense just might be overwhelming here. That it doesn't matter that he doesn't, like, his support mons are fine, but the offense is, like, so good that I don't know how much it matters. And having Intimidate with Quillfish is nice, but he doesn't need to bring Quillfish that much, if ever. And I don't know if I should be happy or mad that I'm playing it week 1, because hopefully I never have to face it again after this week. But it also means I have to play it right away. So we'll see how that goes for me.
Good luck.
Yeah, this team, he could just bring his top 6 every week and could win every game. I wouldn't be surprised if he has to play well, but that's how good the top 6 are, I think.
I'd agree with that. Well, there you have it, VGC. Those are your power rankings. Good luck this season, and that's about it. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for helping me out here, Nuke Bomb. I appreciate talking to you and going through this with you, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll see you in the WPF, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.